Trauma work belongs to all of us. What clinicians can unlearn to be more present? Welcome back to Beyond the Spot, where we are decolonizing healing one brain at a time. And today, we're going to pause and look at something we don't always name in the field of therapy, counseling. Yeah. Trauma work belongs to all of us because trauma doesn't just shape the lives of the people who come to us for support, it shapes us too. Our profession as psychotherapists, healers, helping professionals trains us to focus out there. Uh-huh. On the person sitting across from us, the people sitting in the groups with us. But the truth is, our nervous system's coming to the room too. Uh-huh, that's right. Our whole nervous system comes into the room. And if we haven't tended to our own trauma, it doesn't stay hidden. It leaks. By golly, sometimes it even pours. Yeah, because what happens in the room isn't just about the words exchanged. It's about nervous systems speaking one to the other. And when we, as clinicians, haven't done our own work, our limbic countertransference can quietly support the shaping of the entire session, whereby the client can feel less than safe to go where they need to go. When we have unchecked limbic countertransference where we don't notice it, to go back into the tail of the comment or notice that limbic countertransference to be able to better support the client system, yeah, we can actually take over a session and create space that doesn't feel safe enough, where we're not present enough for our client to go where they need to go. Facts. And be clear about it. We will, as clinicians and healers and helping professionals, we will experience limbic countertransference in every session. Well, today I'm going to unpack that a little deeper for you so that you can begin to notice what that is when that's encountered in session. And it is absolutely ubiquitous, as my lovely mentor David says, because we have a limbic system. And just as I'm making the assertion here, it's not just the words in a session. And for those of you who know what I'm talking about, it's a feel. And it's not just a feel for the clinician or the healer or the helping professional, it's also a feel for the client or the patient. This goes so far beyond words exchanged. Neurobiologically and relationally, we're having an exchange from the time we have an encounter. I am Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, and welcome back. And I just want to give you an invitation right from the get-go. Before we go any further, take a breath. How about a deep one? Yeah, and as you're taking that deep breath, just allow your eyes to land softly somewhere. And as your eyes land, I would prefer for them to land on something that's pleasant for you. Ask yourself, What part of my own story do I know still walks into the room with me as a clinician? Beyond the Spot, Decolonizing Healing One Brain at a Time, is a podcast that weaves my first love, of course, brain spotting, and somatic informed modalities with embodied healing, cultural consciousness, and real talk about trauma, resilience, and recovery. Hosted by Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, a licensed professional counselor, spiritual healer, and the first Black female brain spotting trainer in the world. Each episode dares to dismantle mental health myths, uplift lived experiences, and restore collective wisdom. One conversation at a time. Beyond the Spot podcast is for educational purposes and is not therapy. Please reach out to licensed medical and mental health professionals. Thank you. I want to begin this episode with some clarity. What do we mean by trauma? Operationally, trauma is not just an event. It's the impact of what overwhelms our nervous system's ability to cope, to integrate, or even feel safe. It could be one acute moment, like a car accident or an assault, or it could be chronic, like racism, like poverty, like family neglect, or constant microaggressions. Trauma lives in the body. It reshapes the nervous system. It alters how we breathe, how we sleep, how we connect, how we trust, if at all. It changes the settings of the brain and body, leaving many of us oscillating between fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which are survival defensive systems. Long after the original danger has passed, I'll tell you, trauma can be so tricky in our nervous system that something totally unassociated to the experience or event that you had can literally trigger and light up your trauma network. Yeah, yeah. So that can even be a false positive. Like the very threat of danger can take your alert center with your hypothalamus, your amygdala, and your periaqueductal gray. It could move it into motion to the degree that it can actually drop down to the adrenal, um, whereby your endocrine, it could just get your whole system up and going where you start secreting, and I'm talking about the HPA axis. That's what I'm talking about. The hypothalamus, um, the PAG, um, the adrenal. I'm sorry, the pituitary. Yeah, it's three something in the morning. I apologize. Your pituitary. And what that does is it'll start neurochemicals and secretions, hormones going, cortisol. Your whole system can go up in a big roar when there's not even a real threat present. The idea becomes when there is no threat, adapt. Our systems are just not created to sustain that high level of threat mode all the time. With that HPA, I'm coming from the idea of allostatic overload, even with that, because the HPA deals with your stress axis, AXIS. But nonetheless, I went off on a tangent there because this is so serious. Because when you think about how stress, how trauma responses in our system, how the brain and the body works together to, I mean, because if one part of the brain is moving, there are other parts of the brain moving, and it just kind of gets our system going. And just imagine this idea of trauma that lives in the body. When I talk about how it reshapes the nervous system, how it alters how we breathe, how we sleep, all those things, how we connect, how we trust, if we trust. It literally changes the settings of the brain and the body, leaving many of us just kind of, and I should say also, the first thing we do as mammals, we don't fight. That's not the first thing we do. So when we start talking about those different flight, freeze, fight, or fawn, um, whether it's a real danger or after the danger has passed. And so I do want to extend this reflection to all the listeners here with me, whether you're a client or you're a clinician or helping professional, whatever it is. When you think of trauma, do you only think of dramatic events, or can you recognize the quieter, ongoing experiences that may have shaped your nervous system too? I'll tell you something I learned from Dee. She was one of my SE instructors some years ago. And Dee said, and I love this example, I still use it. She says that what trauma does is disorganizes the system, much like Jenga. So when a person comes in, and I'm talking from a clinician's perspective, when a person comes in and their system has engaged with trauma, if you can imagine the game of Jenga and how how the blocks, they just become disorganized and they're unstable. And if you remove a square too quickly, how it can knock the whole structure over. But yeah, if you could just imagine that to recognize an image, okay, of what trauma can look like in a system. And the fact of the matter is, when it comes to trauma in the nervous system, um, what trauma does is it hijacks the nervous system. There we go. Yeah, it hijacks the nervous system. When I start talking about the amygdala, I'm talking about the brain's smoke alarm when it becomes overactive, or even the prefrontal cortex, the part that helps us reason and reflect, that goes offline. And then the body, in and of itself, learns to stay braced, waiting for the next impact. When trauma isn't processed, the body keeps rehearsing the danger. This is where we talk about hypervigilance, or, something that I heard through brain spotting, which is hypervigilance, right? Which often is the result of when we talk about spiritual abuse, ritual abuse, racism. Like hypervigilance is where you don't necessarily need an event to occur for you to respond in hypervigilance. It's almost like it can be a constant state in your system. Okay, how about numbness, shallow breathing, muscle tension, difficulty resting? All of these can become our new normal as a result of trauma. Okay. This is survival mode, by the way. And the problem is this: it feels normal until it doesn't. We can live years, decades even, not realizing our body has been organized around defense instead of safety. Just want to put an invitation for reflection out there. What happens in your body when you sit with a client in a deep distress? Do you notice yourself bracing or holding your breath even? Or how about rushing to intervene? That's your nervous system speaking, love. And even to those who are clients or patients listening, just an invitation for reflection. Do you recognize patterns of survival in your own body? Like always being on alert, shutting down in conflict, or people pleasing to keep the peace. There is a cost when trauma goes unnoticed. Unnoticed trauma is some of the most dangerous. Okay? And it's most dangerous because unnoticed trauma is absolutely some of the most dangerous because it writes the script of our lives. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And when it writes the scripts of our lives, sometimes it does it pretty quietly. Mhm. Yeah. We think, "I'm just an anxious person," or "I just don't like people. I'm just strong. I don't need help." Yeah, that's some of the stuff we say to ourselves. That's some of the stuff, those are some of the trauma responses. Yeah. But beneath those labels is often a nervous system stuck in survival. And here's the crucial part to that survival mode that has become the norm. Clinicians, healers, helping professionals, we are absolutely not exempt. If we haven't faced our own unnoticed trauma, it shapes how we show up. I'm just saying. Been there, done that. Continue to do my own work. I'm not someone fully healed because there's no such thing. It's an ongoing process. But I'll tell you something. As you engage your healing journey, you have insight and awareness and accountability you didn't know you could have. How do I know? That's what happens with me. Every encounter I have with the healing. Yeah. Fact of the matter is, if we haven't faced our own unnoticed trauma, we can misinterpret a client's shutdown as resistance. We see a client's anger as defiance instead of protection. We rush healing because their pain stirs up what we've avoided in our damn selves. I'm just saying, and I'm saying that with emphasis. Y'all, for those of you who don't know, much of this stuff has come by way of my own experience, notwithstanding my studies and my training. Yeah, I'm serious about this. Hey, how do they say it? We as people, is not our treasure connected to how we spend our time? Or where a person spends their time has everything to do with their treasure is? You and my healing is treasure enough for me. So much so, I'm willing to commit to it at 3:16 in the morning. Unapologetically, and let's be clear, this is not a contract job for me. This is passion work. Yeah, I'm doing this because I enjoy it. And I know some stuff and I want to share it. And I have experiences that have changed my life to the tune of 80 pounds. And I am willing to yell it from a mountaintop. I have happed upon something, which I didn't hap upon it because I know it was divine. You couldn't just hap upon this transformative stuff. I'm just saying. But it's more than enough for me. And so with that, I am humbled by it. I am grateful. And I'm also excited because I sit with way too many people who have been unsuccessful otherwise that somehow end up on my caseload. And they allow me to witness this beautiful transformation and emergence of their lives. And they allow me to be present unapologetically. Because y'all gonna get over that stuff because ain't nothing cute about healing, y'all, and transformation or restoration. It's messy. It can get snotty sometimes. And I don't mean that figuratively. I'm talking about mucus here. But there's a beauty in someone releasing as they're emerging to expand towards that in which they desire for themselves, where they don't have to be in constant pain, whether they recognize it or not. I find that privilege. I find that honor. I find that humility and humanity to be allowed to be present in those spaces. Yeah, yeah. So at the end of the day, just want to give the invitation, colleagues. What survival strategies from your own past still guide how you show up in your work today? And how about how many times have you placed a client in a position where the client may have mistakenly, right? Their survival strategies, you mistook them, you know? I want clients to think about this too. Yeah. Have you ever mistaken your own survival strategies like overworking, overgiving, or constant vigilance for your personality? Because it can show up like that, that you've been doing it so long and you've been in that survival mode for so long that you've taken on these characteristics as just who you are. No, it's not. Absolutely not. Yeah. You know, one of the things for me, and I've been kind of talking about this now for some years through my training that I developed, Brainspotting, intersectionality, and social justice. One of the things throughout the development has been, who are you taking in the counseling room or the psychotherapy room or the healing space? I want to talk about the mirror we don't want to see as healers, as clinicians. We've been taught to stay neutral. That is literally and really a thing in formal spaces for training. But neutrality doesn't stop our bodies from reacting. So sometimes trying to follow that script and how they teach us in the West can deem our own sense of self to be incongruent, where you're holding this mindset of neutrality, but then your body is having a whole different reaction. It's because of our limbic system, the emotional brain. It picks up cues outside of words. I'm talking about tone, eye movement, breath, posture. When a client's nervous system resonates with ours, our limbic brain reacts. If our own trauma is unprocessed, that reaction might be fear. It could be irritation. It could be withdrawal. It could even be over identification. How about how about the fight mode, right? How about when we look to create distance from a client? And if we don't notice it, our body is now running the session. That doesn't even belong to us. Because I know as a brain spotting practitioner, our role as a practitioner is to stay in the tail of the comet. If your nervous system is running the session, then you're at the head of the comet. Tell you something else, even with SE, the way they teach us with that. Our role is to support the client with coming to completion with what's showing up in their system and being able to go from the trauma vortex and bring them back out to the counter vortex. But if your system is running that session, you can't even get the cadence and notice if they're undercoupled, overcoupled, or what the hell is going on. Yeah. Sometimes, as clinicians and healers, it is possible that our nervous systems are speaking louder than our awareness. Just putting it out there. I hope that I am supporting someone with gleaning or gaining something. Clinicians, helping professionals, body workers, what sensations arise in your body when you're with a client who reminds you of someone in your own story? How do you manage it? Or do you avoid it? Yeah. And I'm curious from clients, have you ever sensed a shift in the room that didn't match what you were sharing? How did your body respond? Listen, we're in this together. This ain't a one-way street thing here. Restoration, even when we talk about this idea of homeostasis, healing, it's not a one-way street. We've all been taught stay neutral, keep your stuff outside, focus on the client. But neutrality often becomes a shield, and shields create distance. Clients feel when we shift or shrink back. They sense when we flinch at a topic, when we change the subject too quickly, when we sit in silence, not from presence, but from fear. There is a difference. I'm just saying. Yeah, think about it. I'm curious to know from clients, have you ever felt your therapist rush past your pain, avoid your identity, or seem distracted by their own reaction? I'm sure you weren't imagining it. That could have been their unfinished work in the room. What am I saying here? What I'm saying is, as clinicians, as helping professionals, we are human too, and we come with the nervous system, limbic system, all of that. I'll get there. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And clinicians, when was the last time a client story brought up something raw for you? And what did you do with that? Clients, I'm just curious, do you feel welcomed in the space with your truth? What was it like for your body? Because here's the reality, colleagues. You can look at the statistics of the number of people who are re traumatized in therapy, especially when we talk from an intersectionality lens. especially when we talk about black and brown folks. It's not an uncommon thing, unfortunately. And let's be clear, because you BIPOC or rather dominant cultured white folks, it is not uncommon for people to be re-traumatized in counseling rooms because when clinicians are working with client and patient systems, when they don't read the system and understand that you can take somebody beyond their system's window of tolerance, that you can take them somewhere, and I hate to say it, and not have the skill to support the client with their own sense of resource. Yeah, you can overtap it. You really can. Yeah. 'Cause you're taking them beyond their pill, taking them beyond their window of tolerance, because you're doing beautiful work with them, but now there are manifestations and features that are coming out of that client as they're deepening their work, and you just don't know what to do with it. We have an ethical responsibility. And if you don't have the skill to support a client system, please refer them. It is imperative, especially in these days and time in world history, that we have trauma responsive modalities, techniques, and tools. Yeah, yeah. And so, even with that, where I'm going is what we carry into the room. When we don't do our own healing, it can show up as countertransference. That becomes about us, not the client. It could become avoidance of race, sexuality, gender, or even faith because we haven't looked at our own biases or we don't even know our own social locations and identities. It can even show up as over functioning, working harder than the client to quote unquote fix what makes us anxious. How about shutdown? Going flat when we're overwhelmed. These aren't small things. Clients can feel them. I'm just saying. It's a sad commentary when a client feels the need that they were too much or that they had to take care of us. Yeah, that's not their job. I'm just putting it out there. I tell the story in my trainings, my brain spotting trainings. In fact, Suki knows that I tell this story and she's okay with it. She is my childhood best friend and we are very open and she talks about me how I talk about her. But anyway, for people who have trained with me, they know who Suki is. People who've been at my workshops. But let me tell you what sticks out for me. Many, many years ago, Suki received support from a psychiatrist um, for an assessment. I'm not telling any of her information, but let me tell you the deal, and I'm going to tell you why I use it. Suki had health challenges that she's pretty much been healed. Suki has lost like 150 pounds. If not more, because Suki had even gotten over 400 pounds. That's her testimony. We talk about it all the time. She speaks about it openly, and she is proud of it, and I am proud of her. Suki started her health journey that July. I went right after her that December. It was just like that for us. Suki and I are crib mates. Well, Suki had an experience with one of our colleagues in mental health. And the psychiatrist, when Suki was working towards disability, she needed to have that assessment. And when she just responded to the psychiatrist and told her story, the psychiatrist started a travailing wail cry. She cried in such a way that it scared Suki. And Suki left that assessment appointment seeing herself beyond support. And that's just not true. When we as clinicians don't manage ourselves and our stuff, our unhealed stuff, and when we're triggered by certain things, it can send a message to a client or a patient that they're beyond help. I'm just saying. In fact, I'm going to have a conversation with Suki because she's already offered to be a guest on the show and have a conversation. I think I'm going to do that because I really need y'all to know how serious this is, and why I take it so personally. Because I have someone very close to me who had this experience. Okay. And the reality to the clinicians, I'm just curious, it's just a reflective invitation. Which of these patterns feels familiar in your practice? Where did it begin in your own history? Seriously, whether it's countertransference, avoidance, overfunctioning, shutdown. And I'm just curious from clients, have you ever felt silenced or pathologized in session? Not because of your truth, but maybe someone in the space was uncomfortable or had some discomfort. Yeah, because we've got to come to a place of accountability. The reality is this, y'all, and I'm going to say it. Trauma work belongs to all of us. And there are some stuff that are counterintuitive that we literally learn. And what can we do as clinicians to unlearn some of the things that don't serve us to be more ethical and present in our sessions with clients? Because the fact of the matter is, we carry us into the room with every client we sit with. Facts. And you want to know something else? There is a limbic connection. Yeah. Yeah. The limbic brain, our emotional center, it resonates with others. This is why a client's trembling can make our chest tighten, or their silence can even feel unbearable for some, and you just become really chatty. That's limbic countertransference. It's not bad, it's human. Let me say that again. We are not robots doing this work, y'all. And they can say what they want to about using Chat GPT or whatever else as their therapist. No machine can ever replace the human exchange. Because I'm going to tell you right now, when folk get to this place that they're using a machine to do their therapy, all Chat GPT or any other AI can do is give you a response to what you formulated and asked them. They cannot feel your pulse, they cannot feel your energy, they cannot notice the unspoken symptoms. They don't know if you psychotic or not. They don't know if you dissociated or not. I'm just saying. Because some of this stuff is straight up a look or a feel. And last I checked, Chat GPT and them ain't got no nervous system. I am not concerned about no computer replacing me and or my colleagues or helping professionals. I'm really not. I know I'm being a bit facetious, but no, I'm serious about what I'm saying. Because for anyone to give Chat GPT some delusional stuff, they're going to get back a delusional outcome and response. Just saying. But on a more no, but that's serious too. So I'm not even going to say on a more serious note. But the reality here is limbic countertransference is real, and it's going to go in every session we ever sit with anybody. And it's not bad. It really is human. But when it goes unnoticed, It harms, it can. Our nervous system as clinicians, when we go into limbic countertransference, it can start steering the session instead of the clients steering their own session, leading their own work, leading their own session. Because I know for sure in brain spotting, we trust clients to heal themselves. And it is the brain and body that does the work of healing. Yeah. And I'm just curious for clinicians, what happens when you sit in silence with the client? Do you feel anxious, restless, protective even? I've had some of that come up in consultation. I have literally had this whole thing where folks wanted to be protective of somebody else's process and didn't even realize that they were going into limbic countertransference in that degree. That's the benefit of consultation. How do you know if it's your body or theirs? Yeah. And I'm going to tell you right now, clients can feel when we're grounded versus when we're unsettled. Yeah. And I want to tell everybody under the sound of my voice, trust what you know. The fact of the matter is, none of us know each other like that. And maybe your system's not in a place to trust. And that's okay. That ain't got nothing to do with being non-compliant and none of that crap, none of that pathology. Yeah. Because the fact of the matter is, when limbic countertransference goes unnoticed, here's the danger. It often gets pushed onto the client. A client in grief may trigger our own buried grief, and we rush them towards positivity. A client's anger may ignite our fear of conflict, and we shut it down. A client's silence may stir our insecurity, and we overtalk. A client's story may echo our own. Ain't that something in the human experience? And we unconsciously center ourselves. Y'all have had clients that have come to you and said they felt like they were put in the therapist seat. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And I'm curious, because there's a lot going on in the world. I think that mental health is more mainstream and necessary now than ever in world history. What I'm talking about are not just small missteps, they are actually ruptures. And repeated ruptures leave clients feeling unseen, misdiagnosed, re traumatized, or even beyond hope. Yeah. And I'm just curious, just an invitation to reflect. What emotions or sensations in session tend to overwhelm you most as a clinician? What might those be pointing you toward in your own healing journey? Yeah. And as you sit and reflect on it, have you had any clients maybe say that you redirected or dismissed their emotion? Yeah. Are you co-creating space that your client can trust their own body? And let me just go right here with this myth of the healed healer. There's this myth that clinicians must be fully healed before they're ready to help. And another myth that once you're licensed, you are fully healed. Both are lies. Doesn't work that way. No. Here is the deal. Okay? As ethical, responsible, licensed mental health clinicians, we are not called to perfection. We're called to awareness. Healing is a lifelong practice. Okay? And let me be clear about saying this to the people in back of the room. A good therapist isn't one who has it all together. It's one who owns their humanity, who keeps doing their work, and knows when to say, let's slow down. This might be mine, not yours. Or better yet, I don't have the skill set to support your needs. But I'm going to give you these 3 referrals to get you on your way. Yeah, just an invitation to reflect. Where are you still avoiding your own work? And what would shift in your practice if you turn toward it? Then y'all can say what y'all want to say. I don't know about y'all, but I know damn well I had my own work to do. And being a mental health professional, what it actually does is it highlights our own work. For the public who don't know, many of us who are healing professionals, healers, clinicians, and all the things, much of our own experience through life kind of led us to this career that we invested in it. I'm just saying. We are not called to be fully healed. I don't know anyone who is, because that's not possible. Keep living, as my mama often said. As long as you live, there are surely some things that will happen. But we are called to be accountable to our own nervous systems. We are called to do our own work. The myth of the healed healer hides the truth. Clinicians experience every day. The question becomes if and whether we notice it and work with it. And I'm quite open about that work. I absolutely do. I have to. Okay. Where in your work do you notice yourself avoiding? Even clients who bring up feelings you don't want to face. Because I'm going to be clear about it. Yeah. We've all had those experiences that have touched us deeply. I'll never forget that case that touched me. One of the main things required for being more present to adjust your presence quotient, because just being present with the client is healing. Facts. Unlearning to be present. Real presence doesn't come from adding more techniques. It actually comes from unlearning and actually being present. Some of the things, just an invitation for you to consider and think about. Unlearning the savior role we were trained to carry. Unlearning neutrality when silence perpetuates racism, sexism, genderism, or other harm. Unlearning the push to look competent at all times. Unlearning the belief that it's unprofessional to be impacted. That's a lie. Presence means letting our humanity be part of the healing container without letting our wounds lead it. Presence requires us to unlearn the professional scripts that tell us to override our bodies. We must unlearn the belief that neutrality means silence. Unlearn that urge to appear competent instead of authentic. I see it all the time. Unlearn the idea that countertransference is shameful rather than a signal to slow down, perhaps. Because our limbic resonance is not the problem. It's the unattended reaction that causes harm. David always says, go slow to go fast. It's real. Neurobiology is always going to be ahead of us. The nervous system is always going to be ahead of us when we notice something that's already passed. Yeah. Just calling into inquiring of my colleagues, what's one professional rule, quote unquote, you follow that actually distances you from presence? And I'm curious to know from clients, how do you know when your therapist feels with you? And how do you know when your therapist is retreating? I just had a session Thursday. Today is Saturday. Thursday. It was quite beautiful. Um, and I was talking with the client, and I said to them my whole idea around suicidal ideation. And I was sharing with them that, one of the major concerns around depression for me is I've learned over the years that when people go into that whole mode of self harm by suicide, they never consider death. They just want the pain to stop. In the way that they affirmed it for me, I mean, just word for word, pound for pound, the way they affirmed that many years ago before they got to this place in their work, that they never really noticed, that they never considered the end or transition or death. And by me just saying that, and I gotta be honest, my greatest fear as a clinician, the one thing that I really had to work past as a new clinician, I'm talking back in 2010, I'm talking some time ago, is this idea that when we have to do mental health examinations or when we have to do the questionnaires and things of that nature, when someone gives an indication of self harm with a plan, um, and things of that nature, it bothered me to go through the assessment because I thought by asking the questions that ethically I was bound to ask that I was going to encourage someone to self harm. On this side of it in my career, I now know that that's not the case because I know so many self deletions or self harm by suicide. I've seen statistics where many of them could be prevented. But from the world I live in now, I don't know. But if you can do the research and look it up and see what it says because I have. Okay. So I'm just sharing um one of the things that kind of made me anxious years ago coming into this profession and how I felt about it, right? Um, that was one of my things. It really was. It was one of my things. I'm unafraid to speak about it because it's helped me to grow. And through me being able to express that during supervision many years ago, it really helped me with the support I was able to get from Miss Janie. Because she's the one that taught me. Miss Janie is the same one that introduced me to brain spotting, believe it or not. She's retired now. I'm gonna call her name Miss Janie Smith. That is my people. That is my people. Miss Janie is the one that told me about brain spotting. She was a supervisor of mine for quite a few years, and she really blessed me. Thank you, Miss Janie, if you were to ever hear this, because I'm going to always be the one to come back and say thank you. So, unlearning to be present is a real thing. And I'm curious from clients, if your therapist never acknowledges power, privilege, or systemic harm, they may still be hiding behind neutrality. That's not your fault. That's important for me to say that because sometimes our clients pick up our stuff and think it's them. It's not. Now, a lot of it do be their own stuff. Now, don't get it twisted now, because listen, I know a hell of a lot more competent clinicians than I do incompetent. I'll say that for the record, real talk. And I know a lot of my colleagues are doing amazing work out here, right? So I get it. And it does concern me for anybody who would trust themselves with a beta level artificial intelligence anything. Because the one thing they won't ever be able to mimic or replace, that's going to be human interaction that's required for healing and therapy. Period. Because the bottom line is the brain is a prediction generator. And in the midst of the predictions that the brain generates, it is through those prediction errors that psychotherapy has an opportunity to enter in just slightly and just a little bit at a time, which actually changes the experience, which actually impacts the modulators, the receptors towards healing, baby. That's neuroscience right there. So, yeah, no, I ain't studying that. Just saying. I just want to invite my colleagues and clients to know that our field is progressive and we need to consider some of the stuff that we've picked up, some of the stuff we've been taught as a rule that no longer serves our presence. Because we know presence is required for healing. We got to notice those things. Science is progressive. There, I'll give you one facts. There was a time in the DSM, okay, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. That's what it's called. There was a time that literally homosexuality was seen as a maladaptive behavior, as a disorder. I'm just saying, do the research. I don't make this stuff up. Real talk. So when I say, what professional rule were you taught that no longer serves? Real talk. Because it's no longer identified as a disorder in the DSM, okay, 5. I'm just saying. Or 4, TR4. But historically, it has been. Don't take me there on history. Not tonight. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm smiling as I say that because right now in this moment, there's nothing I would rather be doing than having this dialogue or conversation with you all. All right. Brainspotting as clinicians work. It's not just for the people we serve. It's for us too. It invites us to notice where our own body holds tension, where our gaze lingers, where memories stir even when words don't. I've seen and discovered in training that the block clinicians talk about, they thought was their clients was actually their own. And once they worked through it, their capacity to hold increased and emerged on an exponential level. I'm just I'm just saying, and then for any client, I already know you can feel when we do our work. You can feel the difference. There's something about the quality of the session. It feels such a way that our clients can even go deeper with their own work. The pauses feel open, not awkward. And the client doesn't feel rushed or judged. You feel met. Brain spotting is where I see this most clearly. A clinician finds their gaze drifting, their chest tightening, their body bracing, while the client shares something that mirrors the clinician's own story. This is limbic countertransference in real time. Yeah. Brain spotting heals the healer. Seriously, as a professional, anything that has a benefit for a client, I need to taste it first. As a clinician, I'm serious about that. And brain spotting allows for that. When we as clinicians use brain spotting for ourselves, we learn to notice our bodies. Yeah. We also get to do healing work. I always encourage people that attend my trainings to stay connected with the people they met in the training because that's an opportunity for community and to practice your brain spotting and do your own work. Yeah. People can feel the difference of us. Yeah. Bottom line, the sessions, I mean, our self-work don't just regulate us. It's like they breathe a different air in our sessions. The silence feels open because we're present and we're still engaging with the client. And the nervous system of the clinician becomes a steadying anchor instead of an unseen storm. I'm just telling you what I know. And I just want to be clear with you about where I'm coming from. Brain spotting, as a clinician's work, offers us a map to notice where our gaze, breath, or body movements are. And it gives us tools to process our own survival strategies. Yeah. And the more grounded we are, the more resonance we can hold for clients and the more embodiment. I'm just saying, the nervous systems of both the clinician and the client resonates. I'm just saying, it is what it is, but it's real. Yeah. Our healing as clinicians isn't separate from the work. It's the soil it grows from. And if the soil is depleted, the work will be too. But those of you who know me, you know that I see every human being as a flower in the garden of humanity and or a flower in the garden of God. So I'm talking about healing. Yeah. It's the soil it grows from. And if that soil is depleted, the work will be too. I'm serious about that. Our limbic brains are always in conversation, y'all. Healing spaces are nervous system spaces. If we as clinicians don't notice our own resonance and reaction, we risk making the client hold it for us. Because trauma work isn't just for the client. I can't stress that enough. It's for the clinician, it's for all of us. And when we attend to our own healing, we create spaces where survival can finally give way to safety, presence, resonance, and embodiment. I believe this stuff because trauma work is not a one-way street. It's relational. It is embodied, and it requires all of us, the clinician, the helping professional, and the client, to honor the nervous systems in the room. Because when we heal, we hold space differently. When we heal, we don't make clients carry our weight. When we heal, everyone in the room can breathe. Together we heal. Together we unlearn. Together we remember what presence feels like. And I just want to leave you with this because I love you. I support you. We support each other. We're in community together. No one of us can do this by ourselves. This is for my peoples, my tribe, my body workers, chiropractors, psychologists, social workers, professional counselors, marriage family therapists. I'm talking to all helping professionals. I'm talking about energy workers. I'm talking about the folk out there on the battlefield. Just for you to consider helping professionals. What, I want you to ask yourself this question. What does my body do when my client's story hits too close? How can I work with instead of against my limbic countertransference? Where do I still need healing? Not for the sake of my resume, but for the sake of my presence. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. What would that be like for every one of us to create that space? And what might that look like for our clients to name whatever that is that they experience in the room, whereby our nervous systems can meet theirs? Thank you for spending this time with me for this episode. Yeah, this was special to me because I do believe that there's reciprocity, mutuality, community, all of that when it comes to this idea of healing. Yeah, trauma work belongs to all of us. Our time tonight has been about what clinicians can unlearn to be more present. Until we meet again, breathe and feel your breath. I am Tracy Gantlin-Monroy. If today's episode resonated with your nervous system or your spirit, share it with someone who's still unlearning and reach out to me. My website is gracecommunitycounseling.com. You can reach me on Instagram at Monroy LPC. That is MONROY LPC. Also, I have offerings from retreats to brainspotting trainings to workshops, you name it. And I am also a speaker. So if you ever need a speaker with my skill set, look me up. Give me a call. Let's see what can happen. And absolutely for you clinicians and adjacent body healers, feel free to reach out and attend a brain spotting training. We have trainings all the time. Thank you.